Hey guys, it's been a while, hasn't it? I'm really sorry again for my long leave of absence, but if you've seen my update video, then you know that life has been kicking me in the rear lately with inflation, my job, and mental health, and a lot of other things going on. I haven't really had the time or energy to make new videos as of late. But now that I'm back for the moment, I've decided to start off with the first-party game for this channel. So originally I planned on making this video as a Halloween special for my Let's Look At series last year. But at the same time, I was working on my original Xbox 20th anniversary retrospective, and because of work and mental health and of course, Filmora 9 giving me a hard time at the time, I didn't really have the time or energy to do both videos. But then when I went back to it, I wasn't really satisfied with what I had, so I decided to start from scratch with some new equipment that I recently got, along with the updated Filmora 11. But now that I finally had the time to work on these videos, here's the first edition with Grab It by the Ghoulies, an original Xbox classic from my childhood, developed by one of my favorite video game developers of all time, Rare.
Rare. A gaming company such as them have truly made a place in history when it comes to video games. Founded in 1982 by the Stamper brothers, Tim and Chris, who ran the company until their departure in 2007, Rare started off as one of the many developers for the Nintendo Entertainment System, making games such as Slalom, RC Pro AM, WWF WrestleMania, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and many more games during the mid to late 80s, with their 1986 game Versus Slalom for the Nintendo Versus system being their debut game. During the 90s to early 2000s, however, Rare as a first-party developer for Nintendo was well known for the many cult classics on the Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64 that we all know and love today under the RAREWARE trademark, such as Battletoads and its Double Dragon crossover games, the Killer Instinct games, the Donkey Kong Country games, Diddy Kong Racing, Blast Corps, Jet Force Gemini, GoldenEye 64, Donkey Kong 64, Perfect Dark, the Banjo-Kazooie games, Conker's Bad Fur Day, and much more. The latter list of games were when Rare was in their prime, as these games all had unique aspects and charm that made them famous and what made the Nintendo 64 very well known during its time, making these games all-time classics and becoming very beloved by all gamers young and old. If it wasn't for Rare, the N64 probably wouldn't be as well known as it is today and probably wouldn't have succeeded considering its mediocre track record for third-party games, still use of cartridges, and its lack of tech and limited hardware compared to that of the PlayStation and Sega Saturn at the time, which of course had better performing hardware and CD-ROM player. But at least it did better than the Atari Jaguar and 3DO interactive multiplayer. That's a no-brainer. Now, as stated before, although Rare has been around since the 80s, they were more well known for their projects during the 90s to early 2000s. In the early 2000s, they made games during the last couple of years of the 64's lifespan, them being Perfect Dark, Mickey Speedway USA, Banjo-Tooie, and most famously Conker's Bad Fur Day, which was their last game released on the 64 under the RAREWARE trademark. When the 6th generation of games came around, Rare and Nintendo made the jump to GameCube and were developing Dinosaur Planet, which then later turned to Star Pax Temperatures, Star Fox Adventures, released in 2002 for the GameCube. The 3D action-adventure game in the Star Fox franchise, which you either love it or you hate it. There's literally no in-between. The game would unfortunately be the last game RAREWARE would develop for Nintendo because around the same year, Rare would then be bought out by Microsoft. And funny enough, the day this was finalized was literally a day after Star Fox Adventures released. Although Rare would at least release Game Boy Advance ports of their older games during this time, Rare would then go on to be a first-party developer for Microsoft, and over the past generations of Xbox, have released titles such as Conker's Live and Reloaded, the Xbox remake of Bad Fur Day. During the Xbox 360 era, they also made Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, the follow-up to Banjo-Tooie, and Perfect Dark Zero, a prequel to the original game. And of course, the Xbox One reboot of Killer Instinct, which is still one of my top favorite fighting games of the modern day. Aside from those games, Rare also made some original titles for Xbox systems such as the Viva Pinata games, Jetpack Refueled, Kinect Sports, and Sea of Thieves. In addition, they have also recently released a reboot of Battletoads for the Xbox One and Series X/S consoles and are working on a new upcoming game known as Everwild. which was first revealed at XO19 back in 2019. Now, the first ever Rare game I played as a kid was Killer Instinct on the Super Nintendo, which was also the first console I owned and another one of my favorite consoles of all time. Aside from Killer Instinct, I also played the first Donkey Kong Country game, and I also got to play Banjo-Kazooie and Diddy Kong Racing at one of my best friend's houses at the time in my childhood neighborhood in Georgia during sleepovers. They were given to him by his older brother, and man did we make some memories. But then one game came along that changed it all, and that game was Grab It by the Ghoulies. First released on October of 2003 for the OG Xbox, Grab It by the Ghoulies was Rare's first Microsoft-developed game and their first Xbox game in general. Fun fact, this game was originally being developed for the GameCube back when Rare was still with Nintendo, but development of the game switched over to the Xbox after Microsoft bought out the company. There's even an E3 2001 GameCube trailer for the game that you can find online, and it looks so much different compared to the final version. I remember back when I was 6 years old and I would see the commercials for this game come on TV, and every time I saw it, it just kept captivating my attention. I didn't know if it was because of the aesthetic, the goofy looking monsters, or maybe just the way how the advertisement delivered it. Months later, my parents got me the game after a whole school year of good grades, and throughout the summer of 2004, my sister and I would constantly play this game, and we both loved every second of it.
Now the year is 2022. Games have evolved heavily since then and are much more different compared to games like this. So is Grab It by the Ghoulies still worth looking at today? Well, let's find out.
So the story of the game starts off with our two characters, Cooper, the main playable character of the game, and his girlfriend Amber. During a journey through the woods, the two are caught in a storm and need to find shelter. The two then come across a creepy mansion known as Ghoulhaven Hall, which is the estate of the crafty Baron von Ghoul, who, is it just me or does he look a lot like Dick Dastardly? Anyway, although Amber insisted on seeking shelter in the mansion, Cooper was against the idea and instead wanted to proceed to the next village, claiming that the mansion could be filled with creeps or worse.
I mean, he's got a point. If I was walking in the woods in the middle of the night and I saw a creepy old mansion like this, with green smoke coming from the windows and lightning striking in the same area, then I wouldn't want to stay in there either.
Anyway, this angered the Baron, who proceeded to have his minions known as the Ghoulies capture Amber and keep her prisoner in his house to add to his collection. Cooper then entered the house in order to rescue Amber from the clutches of the Ghoulies, but come across imps. After defeating the imps, Cooper is then introduced to Crivens, the butler of Ghoulhaven Hall, who gives Cooper a map of the manor and offers his help to Cooper throughout his journey in the mansion to rescue his girlfriend. While searching, Cooper finds Amber in the game room, and as he tries to get her out of the chair, the fireplace then spins and takes her to the room on the other side. Cooper once again finds her after traveling to the other side, but this time she falls into a trap door, and Cooper then has to venture into the mummy-infested cellar of the mansion. Cooper eventually finds her and thanks to the help of Crivens unties her from the chair. The two embrace each other, but then this happy reunion was interrupted by mad scientist Dr. Crackpot, who was actually the creator of the Ghoulies. Crackpot takes out a ray gun and uses it on Amber, which turns her into a hideous ghoulie. Crivens then instructs Cooper to head to the kitchen and find Ma Soupswole, the cook of Ghoulhaven, and have her create an antidote. After helping Ma Soupswole with a fire imp problem, she instructs Cooper to find 3 ingredients he needs to create an antidote, which consists of giant glowworms, a giant chicken egg, and finally dungweed. Cooper first makes his way to the manor's lighthouse, where he comes across Fiddlesworth, the jolly groundskeeper of Ghoulhaven. Fiddlesworth provides help to Cooper by letting him use a super soaker, which includes a magical liquid which I'm pretty sure is holy water. Anyway, after fighting through Ghoulies with the super soaker, Cooper eventually obtains some glowworms. After returning to Ma Soupswole with the worms, Cooper then makes his way to the chicken shed, which includes the next ingredient to the antidote, a giant chicken egg, which also turns out to be the Baron's breakfast. With the assistance from Fiddlesworth again, this time giving Cooper a garlic shooting gun known only as Ol Edna, Cooper was able to fight his way through vampire chickens. I know, right? And obtain the egg. After Cooper comes out of the chicken coop, a mysterious skeleton comes out from the bushes and snatches the egg from Cooper. Fiddlesworth encourages Cooper to chase after the skeleton, and after fighting through Ghoulies in the mansion, he manages to have him cornered in Ma Soupswole's kitchen. Come back here, little bastard. Ah, come here, you little bastard. Get out of here, give me the egg back. Give me, that's not your breakfast, that's mine. I needed to save my girlfriend. Come here, get back here, you little boneheaded bastard. I'm gonna kick your ass, you little, get back here. Give me the fucking egg back, you little piece of shit. After beating down the skeleton, Cooper was literally going to finish him off until Ma Soupswell jumps in to intervene. It turns out this mysterious skeletal individual is named Mr. Ribs and happens to be Ma Soupswell's apprentice, who only wanted to help Cooper in finding the ingredients.
So, if his purpose was to help Cooper get the egg, then what was the point of all of this then? I guess just for the comedic boss fight.
So after an exhausting turn of events, our heroes add the egg to the mix, and all that's left for the antidote is the dungweed, which Cooper can find in the castle's walled garden. During his travels in the mansion, he comes across a new weapon, which is a gun that shoots soda cans, but was stopped by the grouchy cleaning lady of Ghoulhaven named Bass Buffbrass, who ridicules Cooper for making a mess, but after clearing up the misunderstanding over the ordeal, lets Cooper have the weapon to throw it out, but instead uses it on enemies and to make even more of a mess. After obtaining the dungweed, which, ew, even from the screen it smells like farts, Cooper returns to Ma Soupswell with the final ingredient. Ma Soupswell mixes all the ingredients together and, thanks to Cooper's effort, makes the antidote to cure Amber. He then makes his way to the cellar library where Amber is and...
The things that go over your head when you were a kid.
Anyway, after giving Amber the antidote, Ma Soupswell mistakenly added a wrong ingredient, which in turn transformed Amber even further into a feral monstrous ghoulie that can beat the shit out of Cooper. After fighting with Monster Amber, she knocks out Cooper, and before she could deliver the finishing blow, Ma Soupswell comes to the rescue and throws the correct ingredient at Monster Amber, which turns her back to normal. Cooper and Amber are then reunited and attempt to escape the mansion, but was stopped by Mr. Ribs, who begged the duo to stay and help free the other kids who had been kept prisoner by the Baron. The two agree to help, and Mr. Ribs instructs Cooper to find Crivens the butler and ask him for help. Crivens tells Cooper that the Baron has the key to free all the prisoners, and the only way to get to the Baron is to find 3 pieces of paper which contain a magical rhyme that can unlock the door to the Baron's room. After achieving the first piece of paper from the greenhouse's potting room and the second piece from the stables, Cooper then obtains the third piece from the insane Dr. Crackpot, the scientist who turned Amber into a monster earlier and did it in a very comedic fashion. After obtaining all 3 pieces of paper that include the rhyme, Cooper makes his way to the door that leads to the Baron's room and uses the rhyme. He then enters the room and finds Crivens, who beats the ever-living shit out of the Baron. Crivens was able to retrieve the key and give it to Cooper. As it turns out, Crivens was actually the Baron in disguise the whole time. Then who the heck was he beating up earlier? A dummy? Anyway, the Baron decided that now was the time to put an end to this little game. He then fights Cooper, and during the fight, he brings out his secret weapon, the unfinished and ironically named Red Baron. After a hasty battle, including one Star Wars reference, and the Baron being kind enough to offer us a weapon as a fighting chance, Cooper defeats the Baron by kicking him out the window and retrieving his key. With the Baron defeated and the key obtained, Cooper and Mr. Ribs ventures throughout the mansion to free all the prisoners. However, this is the part of the game that gets a little tricky. So before I continue, throughout the game you'll come across other kids who are unfortunately taken prisoner by the Baron as well. There's a total of 10 of them throughout the mansion, and they're all imprisoned in their own way. Some of them in a sort of comedic fashion, and some...
You know what? I don't even want to know.
Anyway, like I was saying before, there is a total of 10 prisoners found throughout the mansion. Once you obtain the key, you have a total of 13 in-game minutes to find and free all the prisoners, or else they will be locked up forever. Luckily, Mr. Ribs will take you through shortcuts in the mansion to get you to the prisoners faster. You need to fight through ghoulies, and although it's pretty challenging, it's not that hard. Now here's the kicker, however. At this point of the game, it won't save for you, and when you get knocked out, time doesn't reset and you have to continue with the amount of time it gave you. Now depending on how fast you beat this part of the game, the ending can result in one of 2 ways. 1, if you fail to free all the prisoners, Cooper and Amber are able to escape, but all the kids are trapped forever in Ghoulhaven Manor. Cooper and Amber say their goodbyes to all the mansion's inhabitants who helped them on their journey and make their way to the nearby town. However, the Baron was shown following them on his makeshift plane, leaving what happens afterwards unknown. If you do manage to free all the prisoners in the mansion in time and make it to the front entrance afterwards, you'll be taken to the front gate where Cooper and Mr. Ribs freeze one more prisoner in a giant dog food bowl. After successfully freeing all the prisoners, Cooper and Mr. Ribs celebrate but are ambushed by a swarm of imps, leaving both of them unconscious. Before the imps could eat them, however, Ma Soupswell jumps into the fray and defeats all the imps. With the Baron defeated, the prisoners freed, and ghoulies taken care of, Cooper and Amber leave the manor, say their goodbyes to the inhabitants, monsters and make their way to the nearby town with the Baron following them.
So yeah, basically you get the same ending, except if you don't save all the kids, the marsupial portion is omitted. But I still consider that part to be the good ending of the game since you saved all the kids. Now that I got the story out of the way, let's look at the game itself.
Now, as always, let's start with the graphics. When you first look at this game, you can tell this is a Rare game. The cartoony aesthetic, the cell shading, the funny and outlandish designs, and even the character models all scream Rare. When you look back at Rare's past games and see how distinct their art style was back at the time and look at this game, it really shows that Rare has made most, if not all of their games age well, not just gameplay-wise, but visually as well. I mean, look at some of these levels. They all have distinct designs from each other, whether some of them look normal while others just look completely bonkers from what you would expect to see in a mansion like this. These level designs give me the same vibes from what you would expect from weird 90s cartoons. Hell, even the in-game cutscenes for this game tell the story through a comic book with static images for each panel. The characters in this game, both humans and ghoulies, also have very distinct characteristics that make them very goofy and just weird. Like, just look at the designs of some of these ghoulies. You really expect me to be intimidated by monsters that look like something from one of the developer's kids' drawings? The characters don't even talk, they mainly grunt or make weird noises when they communicate, and the dialogue is read on separate panels. Something of what you would see from Rare's previous games aside from Conker's Bad Fur Day, which had full speaking dialogue. Also, I like how the skeletons sound like Gruntilda from Banjo-Kazooie. Now, Grabbed by the Ghoulies is a beat-em-up action-adventure game with a style more simplistic than other Rare games before this one. The game plays in a linear style where the player fights against monsters known as ghoulies in different rooms. Now, the ghoulies are the main antagonistic force that you face off against in this game. The ghoulies range from skeletons to zombies to mummies to spiders and much more. There's even haunted objects in this game you fight against, such as haunted doors, haunted chairs, haunted paintings, and haunted coats. You fight against the ghoulies using different methods, and these methods can generally be your fists, or you can pick up objects and use them as weapons to provide more damage. Now, most action games tend to use the face buttons or triggers as the primary buttons for attacks. Grabbed by the Ghoulies, however, uses the right thumbstick for your use of attacks. Depending on what direction you flick the right thumbstick is the direction Cooper will attack. You flick it upwards, he attacks what's in front of him, but if you flick it back, he will attack what's behind him. When Cooper fights against enemies, he will lock onto and focus on one automatically, and you have to repeatedly flick the right thumbstick towards a certain direction repeatedly to attack them. After hitting them enough times, the enemy will be stunned and have small bats flying around his head. Afterwards, you flick the right thumbstick towards the enemy again to perform a powerful attack to knock them on their ass. And depending on if you have enemies ganged up around you, you can flick the right thumbstick in multiple directions to get a hit on each enemy at once. And when you do the power move, which can only happen when they are stunned, it works really well as a crowd control tactic. Although this control scheme was pretty uncommon at the time, there have been other games aside from Grabbed by the Ghoulies that implemented this control scheme in various ways. Examples would include games such as Ape Escape, Mark of Kree and its sequel Rise of the Kasai, and Jet Li Rise of Honor. With Ape Escape using R3 on the controller to use items to stun and capture apes, and Mark of Kree and Rise of the Kasai using the right analog to target enemies you are fighting and using the corresponding face buttons to attack those that have been targeted. Then there's Jet Li Rise to Honor, which just like Grabbed by the Ghoulies uses the right analog to attack in the direction you push the analog stick in. So if you're used to action games with traditional controls, then this game will only be a slight adjustment. When it comes to combat in this game, it works the same if you have a melee weapon or throwable object. To pick up objects in this game, you go up to any that has a floating hand over it and press the A button. There's 3 different objects to pick up to use as weapons. There's the objects that work as melee weapons like brooms, chairs, and others that cause quite a bit of damage and knock back enemies, but break after each hit, and after the 3rd hit, it's completely broken. Then there's throwable bundle objects such as glass bottles, toilet paper rolls, and cheeseburgers. Ugh, what a waste. Where you can throw one from the bundle at a time in limited quantities. And finally, there are the larger objects like plant pots and televisions that you pick up and throw at enemies. And even if it doesn't hit them, the shockwave after it explodes does some damage. Then there are the larger pieces of furniture such as pool tables and bathtubs, which when you push A on one side of them, will cause Cooper to spin the whole whole thing around and cause a shit ton of damage to enemies caught in its vicinity, but will break after one use. Using these objects as weapons are a great way to add some extra damage and go through the level quicker. If you no longer want to use the object you're currently wielding, you can just push the B button, which will destroy it completely, leaving another object open for the taking. Unfortunately, you can't take the object with you to the next level as it will automatically collapse once you walk through the door. Speaking of weapons, at some points of the game you'll come across special weapons, and those are the candle, the fire extinguisher, the water gun, Ol Edna, and the soda popper. These weapons work differently as they never break, but there is a catch. You use them the same way you do other weapons, with the candle being the only melee special weapon which works against ghoulies such as the mummy and cursed mummy, but can still do a good amount of damage to other ghoulies. The other 4 weapons work as ranged firearms. All you have to do is push and hold the right thumbstick in the direction of your choice and you'll continuously fire at that direction. Here's the catch though. You see that meter on the bottom right there? That's your limit on how much you can shoot. When the meter goes all the way to the red, you won't be able to shoot the weapon until it recharges up, which it will do after a few seconds. You're not completely helpless though, because you can flick the right thumbstick instead of holding it and you'll swing your firearm and hit ghoulies. This is a good method to use when the meter is out or when enemies are too close. A good crowd control tactic. And even if the candle goes out, it's still good for whacking enemies away. What I think is cool about these weapons is that they each have their pros and cons, making them very unique from one another. The candle, although requiring you to be up close to the enemies, provides a good amount of damage from burning and is the only weapon that can damage and kill the mummies. Be wary when using it though, because the candle burns out pretty quickly. The fire extinguisher, which is only used in Ma Soupswell's kitchen and in the stables, is only effective against fire imps, but that doesn't mean you can't whack other ghoulies with it. The water gun has holy water in it that can be effective against zombies, zombie pirates, and even the haunted television, but as far as I can tell, those are the only ghoulies it works against on. Despite that, it's still very effective. Ol Edna shoots cloves of garlic, which although this weapon can be used on other enemies, it's far more effective on vampire chickens and regular vampires, causing 20 points of damage. Finally, the soda popper, my personal favorite, as the name suggests, shoots out cans of soda, and this weapon works on all ghoulies and can do 30 points of damage, making it one of the most effective weapons in the game. It's even designed to look like a revolver. Do you feel lucky, punk? These special weapons were a nice addition to the game and really changed the levels up a bit. Now next I'm going to talk about the ghoulies. Each ghoulie in the game is unique and acts differently with their own strengths and weaknesses and have their own patterns of attacks. For example, the skeletons, while not the strongest enemy in the game and you can take one down easily, are rather challenging in number and can leave you at a bit of a disadvantage if more than one gang up on you. But if you manage to gain the upper hand and beat the crap out of them and knock them down, they take a while to get up so you can constantly deal finishing blows until they die. They go into a fisticuffs sort of stance where they throw quick jabs at you, and when Cooper gets hit enough times, then he will get stunned and depending on the ghoulie can do a strong attack on him which not only knocks him down but does a lot of damage. With the skeleton's case, he will build himself up to do an uppercut attack that sends you flying. Skeletons can also pick up items to use as weapons, which is signaled by the light bulb that appears over their head. The zombies in this game are also weak but slightly stronger than the skeletons. When they're close enough to you, they slap you a few times and then deliver a powerful kick to knock you off your feet. But they fall on their ass when they do, and it's pretty funny. Their other form of attack is that they'll start swinging their arm like a windmill to prep themselves up for an attack, and if you manage to dodge it, their arm flies off and they freak out realizing their arm is gone. You can even use their arm as a weapon if you pick it up before they do. Talk about arming yourself. Another interesting thing about the ghoulies is that at certain points of the game, particularly the later half, some of these ghoulies get different abilities or attack behaviors. For example, the imps, which are the first ghoulies encountered in the game. The first version of the imps just smack you on the legs and are a nuisance in groups. But later on in the game, there's a variation of the imp which can make his head bigger and will jump on you and start biting your head unless you shake him off. Not only that, but there are different types of imps as well, such as fire imps, ninja imps, and even flying imps, all with different attack variations. Another example are the zombie pirates. Originally, these guys will just start kicking you with their peg legs, and when you get dizzy, they'll charge at you with their cutlass. The other version of the pirate drops his cutlass down and pulls out a treasure chest from his trousers. I don't want to know how, and he will say, "Pace of an 8" before throwing it at you. When this happens, you can pick up their cutlass, and it's a great weapon against pirates because just one swing and it kills them instantly. Another example is the mummy, and this guy is pretty tough. For one thing, it only takes one hit for him to make you dizzy, and then he will pull out a staff, which he uses to do a powerful attack, and it can take out a shit ton of your health. You do have some time to quickly recover, so you can get away, but make sure you dodge it quick enough. But what also makes this dude tough is that unlike most of the other ghoulies in this game, he can't be killed by normal means. You can beat him up all you want, but his health never goes down. The only thing that knocking him down does is keep him down so you can get some distance from him. The only way to actually do damage and kill him is by either having the candle on you at certain levels or by knocking him into a furnace or fireplace if the level has one. Ironically enough, the mummy is actually the only ghoulie that is somewhat pacifistic or at least uninterested in attacking Cooper unless they are attacked first. So some levels they appear in, it's best to avoid provoking them if there's no way to kill them. But even if you do have to fight them, they aren't that hard. Like I said, just knock them down to get some distance between you guys. Then there's the cursed mummy, where just like the mummy can't be killed by normal means. But this guy is worse and so much more annoying. One variation of the cursed mummy says some ancient dialect where if you're caught in it will drag you towards him and he will smash you with his slab. Another variation will say the same dialect but his slab explodes, releasing some cursed giggling spirit where if you're touched by him only have 20 seconds before he instantly kills you. To get rid of the curse you either need to leave the level before the timer runs out or kill the cursed mummy. And just like the regular mummy, they can also be killed by fire. And as I said before, when Cooper gets hit enough times he starts getting dizzy and it leaves you vulnerable for a moment and open to a strong attack by enemies. However, if you quickly roll the left thumbstick clockwise, you'll be able to recover much quicker. Now from the beginning of the game to the end, the player will travel throughout Ghoulhaven Manor and will come across the different rooms throughout the adventure, each room having a different and unique appearance. Every time you enter a room, you will be tasked with completing certain challenges to progress to the next room. This happens when at some point of the level, the door will close and create a question mark on the door while a creepy jingle plays in the background. Afterwards, on the top left corner of the screen, you are shown icons regarding specific challenges you are required to accomplish in order to beat the level. These challenges can range from finding a key to unlock the door, find and defeat a specific ghoulie or ghoulies of interest, kill a certain number of ghoulies, and more. Once you complete the challenge for the level, the door will unlock and you can move on to the next area. Some levels won't have any challenges and you can just walk through the door to progress to the next level. Be careful though, depending on what you do or find in the room, it can trigger an optional challenge. However, although this may sound simple enough, there are times where these level requirements and challenges can prove to be, well, a challenge. There's a few reasons why I say that. One reason is because every time you enter an area, your health is adjusted by the Baron and it's completely random too. Some levels you enter your health could be really high and you've got nothing to worry about, some levels your health is in the middle, and some levels your health is low enough to where 1 or 2 hits could knock you out. And every time your health enters 0, Cooper passes out and you have to start the level all over again. No checkpoints. Another reason is that aside from the objective that you need to complete in order to open the door, there will be times where you are at a disadvantage because of certain rules given to you where you cannot perform certain actions or there will be consequences. Actions such as don't use your fists, don't break anything, don't get hit, and so on. And what are the consequences if you break these rules? Well, this happens. This ghoulie known as the Reaper will appear, and he's one of those bane of existence enemies that you would see in games. The Reaper will only appear if the timer that the level has featuring him runs out, or if you fail an objective that the level tells you not to allow, as I've stated previously, and once he appears, he will chase you down throughout the level. Unlike every other enemy in this game, the Reaper doesn't have a health bar and can't be killed. When he appears, you have to avoid him as best you can, because if he touches you, it's an instant kill. He starts off slow at first, but the longer you stick around while he's there, the faster he becomes. Thankfully, he's not too much of a concern because even if he does appear, he's not totally invincible and can be fought back to give you some space. One way to make sure he keeps his distance is by using throwable objects at him, which can either knock him off his feet or stun him to give you some breathing space. Another way you can make sure he keeps his distance is by guiding him towards you with a ghoulie in your way, because every time he kills something, whether it's you or a ghoulie, the Reaper will take his scythe and use it like a guitar, which makes him vulnerable and open to attacks for at least 4 seconds, or you can just run away and keep distance between you and him. So when you get to a stage where a Reaper might appear, make sure to leave out plenty of ghoulies to use as fodder. Another way is that depending on the level, you can actually get rid of the Reaper by completely knocking him out of the boundaries of the level, such as knocking him out of the window or knocking him into a well outside the chicken coop. Afterwards, he can't revive in the level and you won't have to worry about him anymore. There are other ways that could protect you against the Reaper, but I'll get to that later. Now this game also includes power-ups. in the form of soup cans. Throughout the game, there are various Moss Soupsville soup cans that can offer a variety of power-ups. These power-ups include your typical health booster, which increases Cooper's health for the level. Each of these have a number on it which signifies how much health will be added. Then there are temporary power-ups. As the name suggests, these power-ups only last a certain amount of time, and each one is different with how long it lasts. Some last for a long time, some last for only 10 seconds, and there are a few that last forever until you complete the level. These have a variety, such as a power-up that instantly kills enemies in one hit, a power-up that turns ghoulies against each other, a power-up that can immediately end the challenge without completing it so you can progress to the next level, and a power-up which makes your weapons temporarily unbreakable, but this only works with melee weapons and you can throw an unlimited amount of the bundle of throwable weapons for a limited time. The big things you throw, they still break normally. This is funny, there are these power-ups where you can get a mini Cooper that helps you fight against others in the level. Most of the time there's 3 cans, but it's still hilarious to see. And of course, there's the power-up that freezes all enemies around you for a limited time. This one is great too because you can beat them up when they're frozen, and when the power-up wears off, they all start flying all over the place. There's also an invincibility power-up where you don't lose health no matter how many times you are hit. This power-up also makes you immune to the Reaper's touch. Speaking of the Reaper, levels where you have a countdown before he comes also include soup cans that increases the time it takes for him to arrive, and you also get the Dizzy Reaper soup can, which as the name suggests, leave the Reaper in a dizzy state and poses no threat for the time being. This thing will save your life, so if you find it, make sure you use it as soon as the Reaper comes out. Then there are these soup cans with the orange ghosts over it, and these ones are not to be trusted. Unlike the previous soup cans I've mentioned, which provide you with advantages, these soup cans can provide a huge disadvantage. These disadvantages include bringing your health down to 1, slowing you down completely, and even reversing your controls. And the worst part is that you can't tell what effect they will give off because they all have the same icon, so it's completely random. But thankfully, just like the other soup cans, these effects are temporary. But there is not as much of a hassle as moments of the game where shit like this happens. At some points of the levels you play in, ghosts will appear and try to scare you. These can range from a haunted telephone to ghosts appearing completely at random. After they appear, a red jack-o'-lantern-like orb will appear along with a stock laugh, and you better run away before the thing expands because if you are caught in it, Cooper will go into a panic, and while you can still move around, you won't be able to do anything such as attack or pick up items until it wears off, which happens after a few seconds. Not only that, but you take twice as much damage, so avoid it at all costs, especially if you're in a level with lots of ghoulies. One of the ghoulies, known as Jesse and Clyde, has an ability where they can make their own scare at will, and if Cooper is caught in it, they can throw him across the room and do a lot of damage. Yeah, that's pretty bad, but not as bad as the super scary shock. So I just want to say the super scary shock is not hard, but it is downright annoying. Basically, in some levels, there will be moments where out of the blue, something will happen that causes a super scary shock. When this occurs, you need to push all the buttons the prompts tell you to push in the limited amount of time you have to recover. If you push all of them, Cooper will recover and you will be safe, but if you fail, you lose health. Super scary shocks can range from this blob-like monster dropping from the ceiling and scaring you, to random monsters appearing from the door or washing machine, and even this first-person instance in the beginning of the game where you walk through a hallway with the mounted heads of different creatures. Oh look, there's Banjo and Kazooie! Jesus Christ! One of the ghoulies, Medusa, has an ability where if you get caught in her green line of sight, it triggers a super scary shock. Some levels actually have a soup can that automatically pushes the button prompts for you so you don't need to do it yourself. This mechanic is not hard to go against, but if you want to go through the level quicker, getting the power-up can save you some time. Before I forget to mention this, a majority of the environment in this game is also completely destructible. Sometimes it's fun to just destroy things, but this is also important because when you destroy certain things in the environment, whether it be vases, boxes, or anything else, you'll be able to get weapons, soup cans that give you power-ups, or even the key to unlock the door. Be careful, sometimes ghoulies will pop out instead. Hell, they'll pop out when you get too close to the breakable object. This game also has its share of collectibles. In every level of the game, you'll pick up these things called bonus books, which can be signified from its blue color and Rare logo. Sometimes they're not out in the open, but are somewhat hidden, so you may have to break things in the environment to find one. For every 5 you collect, you unlock a bonus level that offers various challenges, with them being 20 in total. Moving on to the challenges, each time you complete a challenge, you get a medal, and depending on how well you did the challenge, the medals you earn can range from bronze to silver to gold to platinum. I haven't unlocked all of them, so I'm at least going to use some examples of what I unlocked. These challenges can range from killing as many skeletons as possible before the timer runs out, pushing as many buttons during a super scary shock, killing as many zombies in the shortest amount of time, and making sure no imps attack Fiddlesworth for as long as possible. There are many more challenges with different variety of objectives and can get very addicting too. Also, whenever you earn a platinum medal, you unlock content in the gallery, which you can find in the features menu. The gallery shows concept art and character designs from the game's early stages, and they're really cool to see. If you miss any of the bonus books during your playthrough, which honestly is really common because it can be easy to forget, don't fret. You can actually go back and replay any of the levels throughout the game and get the books from those levels. But it's kind of hard to tell which levels do and don't have the bonus book because there's no indication that says so. Hell, you can even replay a chapter in the game if you so desire. Now, I neglected to mention this before, but this game was actually made by the same team who did Banjo-Tooie. And for those of you who played Banjo-Kazooie and Tooie, you'd know that aside from being the most well-known platformers in gaming history, they were also known for some suggestive and somewhat adult humor that flew over the innocent minds of children. Grabbed by the Ghoulies is definitely no stranger to such humor. I already brought up the at least implied Japanese bondage reference and that scene, but there is much more than that. For instance, the vampires. Like, Jesus Christ, could they make their boobs any bigger? Now, I'm not body shaming or anything, but I'm just saying that is way too robust and revealing for an E-rated game. They've even got physics. Boob physics in an E-rated game. Not only that, but one variant of her attack is opening her coffin, running up to Cooper, and pulling him in. She then does whatever the hell she's doing that causes Cooper's health to start draining. I would say she's sucking his blood, but the suggestive sounds say otherwise. You can escape by moving the right stick. And also, I never noticed this before until I played this game again for the video, but when you get the gun Ol Edna from Fiddlesworth, look at what he says about the gun. A bit dubious looking and well used she may be, but what she be lacking in looks she more than makes up for in her performance.
I really don't want to know what Fiddlesworth does with that on his off time. I hope Cooper remembered to wash his hands after using that.
And then there's the title itself. I didn't know this until I got older, but apparently the term Ghoulies, which refers to the enemies in the game, is actually a British slang term for testicles. So in other words, putting it in that context, the title of the game is basically Grabbed by the Balls. I get that this was made by British developers, but come on. There's a lot more jokes like that in this game, and I actually looked up the ones I may have missed, and I just think to myself, how in the hell did the ESRB let these jokes pass and gave the game an E rating? I guess they didn't understand British humor at the time. The game does have its fair share of lighthearted non-adult humor too. Like the enemies in the game, I've already stated previously that the designs and characteristics and even the personalities of the Ghoulies are unique and humorous. They're hard to take seriously, and whenever something happens such as Ghoulies beating the crud out of each other, them dancing in the ballroom, groaning out of disbelief whenever they see another Ghoulie killed, or even having goofy attacks, you can't help but chuckle and laugh at the charm this game delivers. Besides, the zombies in this game are hard to take seriously. They fart for Christ's sake. Oh, excuse you. Another instance with this game's humor is that there are quite a bit of puns in this game. When you pick up the first Rare bonus book, Crivens talks about it and adds a nice little Rare-related pun to the mix. When you beat the first haunted door in the game, Cooper says this. There are so many other puns that are downright clever and funny. I blame this game as one of the influences for my sense of humor today. I must say, this game itself is a skeleton of fun. I mean, the combat in this game is quite impressive. The level designs leave open a window of variety. The gameplay itself will leave you dying for more. Whenever I don't feel like playing newly released titles, I like to pull up a chair and play this classic. Because I don't know about you, but I get quite a kick out of this game.
Get on with it.
Yes, get on with it!
Okay, I'm sorry. The game is so addicting that it'll reap you of your time.
Get on with it!
Oh, okay, I get it. I'll stop. I'm sorry.
Grab It by the Ghoulies is definitely a game that if you haven't played it yet, you definitely should give it a shot, especially if you're a newcomer to Rare's games. The story is fun and original, the gameplay is fun and unique, and the extra unlockable content just adds more fun to it. Notice how I used the word fun 3 times in that sentence. That's because this is what that game is. Fun. Most games nowadays focus more on testing the limits of the console's hardware and focusing so much on a certain demographic that at times they tend to forget what makes playing video games special. Grab It by the Ghoulies is an example that shows you don't need realistic graphics or high-end gameplay to have a good time. All you need is something that helps you to escape reality and provides you with a fun and original journey that leaves you on your couch smiling and enjoying yourself. I personally feel bad for GameCube players back then because they really missed out on this. I wish there would have been some sort of deal to release the game on both platforms. The game even has some really nice and clever Easter eggs, a lot of them being cross-references to Rare's previous games before this. I already talked about the mounted Banjo and Kazooie heads on the wall, but there's also this game room you visit early in the game and there's a whole smorgasbord of Rare video game references. There's framed cover arts of their games released on the ZX Spectrum, such as a Tic Tac and Saberwolf, not related to the character from Killer Instinct. And there's even a shelf that showcases OG Xbox cover arts and cases of their N64 games such as Conker's Bad Fur Day and a few others. There's even a glowing original Xbox packaging that you can break to get the key. I hope the Baron still has the warranty for that. And on some levels of the game, you'll find picture frames of Rare's characters such as Mumbo Jumbo from Banjo-Kazooie, a framed portrait of a Jiggy, and a little statue of Banjo-Kazooie at times. The amount of cross-references this game has is amazing, whether it be the cartoony comic book-like cel-shading aesthetic, the comic relief and the puns, adult humor, and the goofiness of the enemies, or even the level designs. Grab It by the Ghoulies is definitely the game you're looking for a change of pace. And even if this isn't your type of game, I'd still recommend trying it out at least. I know I didn't talk about the flaws that this game had, but when you focus so much on the special little things about a game, it's hard to notice any. The only flaws I can say this game has is that there are times where the game does get a bit repetitive, some of the level designs are frustrating at most with them throwing multiple different challenges and things you can't allow at once, and that the length of the game is pretty short too. But even then, they're not too troublesome and the game is still fun regardless. It's quite a rare example, I must say. Ow! If you like to play Grab It by the Ghoulies, it's honestly not that hard to acquire if you at least have one of any of the Xboxes. One way I would definitely recommend playing this on is through the Rare Replay collection. It's a collection that includes 30 of Rare's most well-known titles over the course of 30 years that span from the ZX Spectrum all the way up to the Xbox 360, including games such as a Tic Tac, Saberwolf, Killer Instinct Gold, all the Banjo-Kazooie games, both of the Perfect Dark games, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Viva Pinata, and so much more. Grab It by the Ghoulies is included in this collection and includes a graphical upscale to play at 1080p at 60 frames per second. They even added a few extra features in this version of the game, such as showing you which levels you didn't collect a bonus book in. Very casual friendly. This, in my opinion, is the essential way to play Grab It by the Ghoulies, plus you get a huge assortment of other games. If you have Game Pass or even Game Pass Ultimate, it's available on there to download and play whether you have an Xbox One, a Series X, or Series S. If you're not interested in getting Rare Replay, however, Grab It by the Ghoulies is also backwards compatible on said Xbox consoles and even on the Xbox 360 if you still have one. You can either buy it digitally, or if you have a physical copy, you can play it on any of the systems. Or if you want to feel really nostalgic, you can get a physical copy for your OG Xbox if you already own one. Now that's the real way to play it.
Man, it's always nice to revisit games from your childhood, and Grab It by the Ghoulies is still a classic on the console despite how obscure it is. But now that I got one childhood game out of the way, I thought I'd go to another one with Luigi's Mansion as my next game for the next video. I'm Shane, also known as Wonder Subset, and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.